Hello, my name is Sam, my pronouns are they, them, and welcome back to my office. So today I am finally done procrastinating and we are going to do the mid-year book Freakout. I've been meaning to do this for almost 2 months now, since the beginning of June, and I have just been putting it off because life is crazy and I like to take on crazy vlog ideas instead that take a lot of time. I was tagged by Words from the Void over on their channel. They mentioned me at the end of their video and I really enjoyed it. It was super fun, so I was like, well, I guess I'll bring myself together and we'll finally get this done. So let's get started on the mid-year book Freakout. So number 1 is the best book that you've read so far in 2023. For that, I am saying Light from Uncommon Stars by Ryka Aoki. So I read this back when I did the Trans Rights Readathon earlier this year. I believe it was back in March. And I loved this book so much. So the way that I like to describe it is it takes place in the perspective of 3 different lives that coincide. One is a teenage transgender woman who is horribly abused by her family and a lot of other people around her, and all she wants to do is play violin and survive, which is very difficult. We have basically the Queen of Hell, a violin instructor who had traded her soul with a demon for, I believe, 7 violin prodigies. And we have a family of aliens who are fleeing intergalactic war and start a donut shop. It is heartwarming, it is heart-wrenching, it is beautiful, it is the best written book that I've read so far this year. Like, the narrative structure of it was just so interesting and so dynamic and incredibly impressive. I still don't really understand how Ryka Aoki did it, but I'm planning on purchasing my own copy so I can go through it and really analyze just how beautiful the narrative structure is. There's a lot of trigger warnings for it. You look at it and you don't think there's going to be that many, but there's a lot. You know, sexual assault, trans violence, etc., etc., etc. The list goes on. If it's content that you think that you can handle when you go through and look at all of the content warnings, 1000% recommend it. I gave it 5 stars. Question number 2 is the best sequel you've read so far in 2023. I ended up choosing Down Among the Sticks and Bones by mcguire. I don't know where my copy is right now. I'm working on doing reviews for that entire series that's out so far, and I own Every Heart a Doorway and Down Among the Sticks and Bones, so they are floating around somewhere in my house waiting for me to finish writing their reviews. I read the entire Wayward Children series, I believe in like 2 weeks, and I did a whole vlog on it, and I fell in love with it. If you're in like a fantasy rut and you're really trying to pull yourself out, like maybe you did what I did because I was stupid and I reread The Priory of the Orange Tree and Day of Fallen Night back to back, and I kind of ruined myself a little bit, and I read them both in like the span of less than a month. Pick up the Wayward Children's series. All like, god, there's either 8 or 9 books out right now. I flew through them. I loved them all, but Down Among the Sticks and Bones, book number 2, was my favorite of the entire series. So it follows 2 twin girls who were brought to the moors, which is this horrible, like, gothic vampire, like, mad scientist, like, just a horrible place. And it's the story of these 2 girls going through the door into that world and them living there and the consequences that happen when you live in a place like the moors and how both of them kind of become at the end. It's fantastic. One of the main characters is Sapphic in nature. She also has, I believe, OCD. It's stated in there that it's not diagnosed because you can't diagnose something that doesn't exist in the world that you live in, and the Moors doesn't like have a diagnosis for OCD, but it's very clear that our main character does have OCD. And it's just a really fantastic book. It's maybe like 150 pages. I was so impressed with it. It was so well done, and it was so interesting. I gave that one 5 stars as well. So, number 3 is a new release that you have not read yet, but you want to. I am choosing She Is a Haunting by Trang, Tran. So this is, I believe, a Vietnamese YA gothic horror. Our main character goes to Vietnam to see her father for the summer, and she has to pretend like she is straight so she can try and get some funds for college while she's there. She has to be like the perfect Vietnamese daughter, but she gets more than she bargains for, and you've got this kind of spooky gothic haunted house vibe to it. I have shown this book off at least 3 or 4 times in videos over this past couple months. Look at it. It's beautiful, as always. I have put this on at least 3 TBRs since my partner purchased this for me. It is on my TBR for the month of June. I still have not gotten to it. I am desperate to get to this book. Like, truly, truly desperate to get to this book. And yet here I am. Still not reading it. It came out in like February. I still haven't gotten to it. I'm gonna get to it. I'm desperate for it. Truly. This has turned into like one of my most anticipated of the years. And I own it. It's in my hand and I'm still procrastinating it. It's my own problem. I have a mashed potato book problem. Thanks Ariel and Raylene from Books Unbound for giving me that term. Okay, so number 4 is your most anticipated release for the second half of 2023. And that is going to be Iris Kelly Doesn't Date by Ashley Herring Blake. So this is book 3 in the Delilah Green Doesn't Care series. And I loved Delilah Green Doesn't Care. Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail. It was fine. It wasn't as good as Delilah Green, but I still enjoyed it. Iris Kelly Doesn't Date. That's gonna be it. I'm so excited because Iris Kelly is chaotic to an extreme. And you know what? I am such a sucker for those book series where it's like, here's a group of 3, like friends, sisters, whatever, and you follow one for one book, and then you follow the next one for the next book, and so on and so forth. The Brown Sisters by Talia Hibbert, that trilogy, to die for. To die for. Helen Hoang, her series that starts with The Kiss Quotient, I read all 3 of them, to die for. I loved every single one of them. Obviously, the Delilah Green Doesn't Care series, to die for. Loving it so much. Even like the Neon God series by Katie Roberts. It's my favorite one of Katie Roberts' series, and you know, you're following like a different couple every time, but staying in the same world. I just love that because I love the continuation of a series like that without really having to be fully encompassed in like the book previously. So I feel comfortable continuing on with these series a year, 2 years after I've read a previous book. I feel totally comfortable doing that. And I love that. So that was my rant. I'm so excited for Iris Kelly Doesn't Date. It comes out, I think, October 24th, 2023. And it's going to be fantastic. I have faith in it. Number 5 is my biggest disappointment so far this year, which actually was Written in the Stars by Alexandria Bellefleur. So I think I gave this book a 2.5 stars, and it's not even so much that I had high expectations for it. I was just really hoping to love this author and her writing because she's a pretty, like, staple sapphic author. I don't feel like I ever hear anything bad about her for the most part. I feel like I don't hear people ranting and raving about her stuff, but I don't ever hear anything bad. And I see her every time I walk into, like, a romance section, and I just felt like she was going to be fine. And you know what? It was not fine. I hated it. I hated it, truly. I think that 2.5 stars, now that I'm sitting here remembering this book, was too gracious. And I probably should have given it like a 1. I hated it. I hated both of the main characters. I thought they were both flat and uninteresting. I hated the writing. It was also flat uninteresting. I did not feel like the two main characters were, I didn't feel like they had like a real connection. I feel like it was just straight lust, and it wasn't even like compelling lust. It was just kind of boring. I'm super disappointed, and I didn't even have like high expectations. If it was mediocre, we wouldn't be having this conversation because I did not have high expectations for it. But it was terrible. So I will never read that author ever again. Number 6 was your biggest surprise. So my biggest surprise was I'm in Love with Mothman by Paige Lavoie. I read this super early in the year, and I read this for, I think it was like a cozy fantasy vlog that I was doing. I read this in the same vlog that I read Legends and Lattes, and I was just kind of expecting something cute, something fun, something like lighthearted, something easy, whatever. I fell in love with this. I devoured this. I fell in love with it. It became everything to me. So this was about our main character, Heather. She is a social media influencer down in Florida, and she is like, you know what? I'm tired of this. I've grown up on social media. My mom was a mommy blogger. Like, I need a break. So she buys sight unseen a cabin in the woods. I think it's like just outside of West Virginia or something like that. I don't really remember. I live in America, but I don't know geography at all. So don't quote me. And she gets there, and she still does stupid things. The main stupid thing that she does is she decides she wants to be aesthetic, despite being on a social media break. And she climbs into a tree, and not tree climbing apparel, because she wants to sit in a tree and read. Well, she doesn't think about how she's going to get down. So she falls out of the tree, only to be saved by Mothman. And their romance goes from there. I'm obsessed with it. I love it. I think the next book actually comes out this year. I know that Paige Lavoie just did a cover reveal for it, and I think it's called I'm Engaged to Mothman. But I didn't put it as my most anticipated of 2023 because I don't remember if it comes out this year or early next year. But it's a second contender for like most anticipated for 2023. I loved it. It was easy, fun, sweet, beautiful. Number 7 is favorite new author, debut, or new to you. So I actually put Sangu Mandana as my first pick. She wrote The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. I'm also putting T. Kingfisher, though, who wrote What Moves the Dead. So these are the books that I've read by these authors. I have a bunch of T. Kingfisher books on my TBR to go, but as far as I'm aware, this is the only Sangu Mandana book that I'm interested in reading so far. I think that she might have a couple like YAs out, but I'm really looking forward to the second book in this series. So Sangu Mandana, this book specifically, was recommended to me as a better option to pick up than The House on the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune, because T.J. Klune has done and said some pretty awful things regarding Native communities and had some not great takes on reunification for families and things of that nature. I am not the expert on problematic things that authors say and do. I never will be the expert. I don't have the mental capacity for it. I just try to do my best to listen to what other people bring up and the conversations that they're having, and I just kind of want to be supportive of the communities that these authors do harm to. So this is absolutely a better book to read than T.J. Klune's House on the Cerulean Sea. This is 1,000 times better. Like, even not looking at it from like a problematic author view, this genuinely is just better. So much better. I loved everything about this. So this is about a witch who gets brought to a house to teach 3 young witches witchcraft, and ultimately her services are required because someone is coming, like a solicitor is coming to the house to try to deal with something with the owner of the house. And oh boy, do shenanigans ensue. And oh boy, is there a plot twist. This was just a fantastic story. I loved all of the characters. We had an elder gay couple who took care of the house. We had a wonderful housekeeper. She was really fun and interesting to follow. We have the grumpy librarian. So we have a beautiful grumpy sunshine dynamic that just blossoms. And ultimately, the girls were such interesting and well-rounded characters. I loved this. Sengu Mandana has become like an auto-buy author for me for anything she writes that is adult or new adult. I'm super excited to continue on with her. And in terms of T. Kingfisher, I really liked What Moves the Dead. I thought it was really interesting. I think that fungal horror is quickly running to the top of my like all-time favorite horrors. But T. Kingfisher, I feel like, just writes really interesting, compelling, dynamic, and vibrant stories in very, very few pages. And that's definitely an art. So I'm super excited to continue on with T. Kingfisher as well. And I have plans to do that very, very soon. I own like 4 books. So, newest fictional crush. So I don't get fictional crushes like I used to when I was like a teenager. It's just not something that I do anymore. And is that because no one, even in a book, can compare to my life partner? Potentially. She is really, really quite fantastic. But I'm going to say Jamie from Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches is my closest thing to it. He is just a grumpy little librarian, and he is so loving and protecting and sassy, and I just loved him. I loved him. And you know what? He's grumpy like my life partner is grumpy, because oh boy, is she a little grumpster. Question 9 was newest favorite character, and I actually chose Cade from the Wayward Children series. He is a trans boy who basically is set to inherit the Eleanor School for Wayward Children when Eleanor is no longer able to take care of it and goes back to her nonsense world. He was in a Fae world, and he was attracted as a child, as like a young female presenting child, and as soon as the Fae realized that he was a boy, they kicked him out after being there for years and years and years, because they only wanted a girl, and they were mistaken. So we don't really see a ton about Cade. Like, he doesn't have a story yet, but I think that he should, because he's such an interesting character. He's like the keeper of these kids, and he's like willing to go on these adventures to help them and save them and fight for them. And I just think that we see like the best sides of Cade, and I've come to really love him, but I want him to have his own story. Like, I want to see every side of Cade and not just the side of Cade that takes care of all of the people around him. So he's quickly become a favorite, and I yearn for a book about Cade. I don't think I'm getting it anytime soon, but I will continue yearning for years to come. Number 10 is books that made you cry. So this year I have found that I have not been crying over smushy books as I would so normally do, because I'm not reading a lot of smushy books. I'm reading a lot of Katie Roberts, which if you know, you know. But I have 2 books that made me like uncontrollably cry, and not sob, just like tears streaming down my face and I cannot stop it. And that is All the White Spaces by Allie Wilkes and How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. So I am in my horror era right now. And these books were terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. All the White Spaces by Allie Wilkes is about a trans man who goes on an Arctic exploration voyage, and they get there, and you don't want to be in the Arctic. No, 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 no. You do not want to be in the Arctic because y'all, they got hunted. And it was terrifying. Just thinking about it, like, gives me the heebie-jeebies. Like, it was so scary, and not in, like, a campy, like, whatever way. It was, like, genuinely horrifying. I loved it. I have to buy my own copy of it because it could very easily be, like, my #1 horror of the year, and I am excited to read more by Allie Wilkes. I also chose How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix because it was genuinely terrifying. I was screaming and just crying, and I had to like go sit at my partner's feet while I'm just sobbing because puppets. When I picked this up, I was not expecting puppets at all. I am genuinely known as someone who does not read synopsis of a book ever. Like, I'll just pick it up and we just go on with our merry little day. I regret not reading the synopsis of that one because you know what? I still have nightmares about puppets. And it's been at least 2 months since I read that. It was fantastic. I think I gave it 4 stars. It was fantastic, but it was terrifying. It brought a little bit too much out of the puppet realm for me, and there was a lot of gore. Those two made me cry a lot, out of fear. Number 11 is a book that made you happy, and for that I'm picking The Heartbreak Bakery by A.R. Capetta. I did a whole video making the agender cupcakes that were in that book, and I don't own a copy of it yet. I need to. It was fantastic. It is about a young person who is questioning their gender pretty significantly, and they work at a bakery and they get all sorts of salty, and they make these brownies while they're in this all sorts of salty mood. In those brownies they infuse their saltiness, and everyone who eats the brownies like causes people to break up. So it's their story about trying to go back around and fix all of the chaos that they have caused with these breakup brownies. And it was so good. It was so sweet. And it was every ounce of queer trans joy that I need. I loved it. I don't remember if I gave it like 4 or 5 stars, but it was really high up there. It was fantastic. It was such a good YA, and it makes me so happy that this is the kind of YA that exists for kids now, in comparison to like the YA that I had, which was just like the Hunger Games. It was not the vibe. So I'm so happy that this is the kind of stuff that is like out there and ready for these young kids, because they deserve it. This was fantastic. And it has some really good recipes in it. So number 12 is favorite book to film adaptation, which I don't have one. I don't watch movies like that. I'm not a movie person. I can't focus. So number 13 is the most beautiful book that you have bought or received this year. And I'm gonna say mine is Now She Is Witch by Kirsty Logan. Look at it. So I did give this 5 stars. It is a sapphic witch tale, and I really, really loved it. I would like to go back through it and read it again and like do an analysis on it, because I thought it was beautifully written, and the narrative structure of it was beautiful. But I don't really know how to put it in words at this moment in time, you know, what it was really about. But the vibes of it were just perfect. You know, it's about a society who hates witches, and of course we're following some witches. I don't even know how to like put this into actual words, but I'm telling you it's worth it. I'm telling you it's worth it. Now She's Witch by Kirsty Logan. It's beautiful. Question number 14. What books do you need to read for the end of the year? So obviously I'm going to put Getting in the Ninth on here by Tamsin Muir. I've been trying to read this for at least 6 months now. I don't really have much more to say about it. I've been trying to read it for 6 months, and it's about lesbian necromancers, so of course I need to read it. But other than that, I need to get through my 23 backlog books of 2023 that I came up with. It's my little reading journal. So far I've gotten through 6 out of 23. But I still have to read The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness, Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo, Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco, Quiet by Susan Cain, Ice Like Fire, A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness, Queen of the Conquered by Kaysen Callender, Released by Patrick Ness, Iron Knight by Julie Kagawa, Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia, Girls of Paper and Fire by Matash Nagan, An Ember in the Ashes by Saba Tahir, All the Light We Cannot See, Fix Her Up by Tessa Bailey, Daughter of the Burning City by Amanda Foody, The Library of Fates by Aditi Khorana, and History Is All You Left Me by Adam Silvera. So those are the, I think, like 17 books that I still have to read to complete that challenge. And basically that challenge only exists because I really want to go through my shelves and go through some of the things that I've had on there for the longest amount of time and see if I want to keep them. So far I've read Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo, Rune and Rising by Leigh Bardugo. I finished up the Grisha trilogy, and I've decided to keep them. I liked them. I read Legend by Marie Lu, which I did not like, and I had the entire trilogy, so I'm getting rid of all 3 of those books. I read Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore by Robin Sloan, which I've owned for years, and I didn't like it, so I'm getting rid of it. I read The Sin Eater's Daughter by Melinda Salisbury. I had 2 of the books in the series. I think there were more than 2. And I thought it was mediocre, so I'm getting rid of it. And then I read A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. I actually read that whole trilogy so far that are out, and I liked it, so I'm keeping it. So far, like, through this challenge, I'm getting rid of 6 books that don't need to be on my shelves because I don't want them. And that's the entire purpose of this challenge, is just to go through things that I'm not sure whether I'm going to want them or not and clear up space on my shelves because I need space. And we're moving back to Connecticut next year, so that's another like 6-hour move. And I have 4 6-foot-tall bookshelves that are full. So I need all the help that I can get. So with that, let's kind of end this with a little bit of a shout out of some of the people and some of the content, like the book content that I'm really loving this year, that are like my top things that I'm consuming and interacting with. So we have Jessie on YouTube, who I believe they were originally Books and Bowties. They took a little bit of a hiatus to deal with some of their mental things and, you know, just exist as humans do. Sometimes humans need a break. But I love their stuff. Fantastic. One of my all-time favorites. Emerson from M Reads is a small booktuber that I found that I've really come to enjoy. We have Boston Gabrielle. She just gives out some of the best recommendations. She's got like a gothic folk horror video that I've been meaning to watch. She just puts out like the dark academia like vibes, and I love it. We have the Books Unbound podcast, which you can watch on YouTube, but I listen to it on Apple Podcast. It's hosted by Ariel and Raylene. It is the most consistent book content that I consume. I listen to it every single week. They put it out, I think, every Sunday, and I love it. I love everything about it. I don't have any complaints for it. I love their dynamic. I love it. It's one of my most consistent podcasts. And then finally, we have the Expert Book Smuggler. She's on TikTok and YouTube, and she gives such amazing horror recommendations, and I am all up in my horror era right now. So a vibe, a true vibe. So yeah, I guess that leaves us with our mid-year book freakout. Okay, so it's the end of July and I've read 79 books this year. So we're using this mid-year book freakout as my like middle of the year check-in point. We're going strong. So I guess that's it for now. If you want to stick around and hang out, I've got a beginner's horror vlog that I had put out last week, and what's to come next week? I have no idea. I guess we'll find out together. So that's it for today, and I will see everyone next time. Bye.